Okay, I think it's time to start our afternoon session now. Okay, welcome back to the conference hall. Before we meeting our speaker, I would like to remind you that apart from attending the conference, actually there are many activities that you shouldn't miss in this conference. Uh, this year, we have a fun activity for you to join in order to get the souvenir from Thailand. We call this activity social activity. To join this activity, please visit our Facebook page and watch 2 video clips of Thai culture. Then post your comments below that post. The most impressive comments will get the special souvenir from Thailand, which will be announced tomorrow at the closing ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Professor Rita Cole to introduce our theme-based speaker. Please welcome.
Hi. So hello, everyone. I'm sorry, I just saw unmute myself anyway. Okay, hello everyone. I'm honored to introduce our theme-based invited speaker, Dr. Baltasar Fernandez-MANJON. So Dr. Fernandez-MANJON is a full professor in the Complutense University of Madrid. He's also the leader of the e-learning research group in the university. He has working in the serious game technology for many years. If you are in the game-based learning area for a while, you must know a game development platform called eAdventure. This is a platform for the non-programmers to build an adventure series game. Just use the point and click. So ICC is honored to invite Dr. Fernandez-MANJON to give us a speech talking about his work and experience in the learning analytics in the serious game. So let's welcome Dr. Fernandez-MANJON, and the floor is yours.
Okay, Professor Kuo. Thank you very much. I will share my screen. Can you confirm me that you are seeing my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to the organizer. I'm really pleased to be here to share our work on serious game and more recently on systematizing game learning analytics for improving the whole serious game life cycle. My slides are already on Slideshare under my name, Baltasar Fernandez-MANJON, but everyone call me Balta, so please feel free to do it. Okay, let's move. I think I have 35 minutes, and if not, please let me know when I should finish. Let's move on the slides. What serious games are? I mean, this is a term coined by Clark Abt in the 1970. I mean, when the technology doesn't allow much to do with the serious games, but basically he has these very futuristic ideas of using games for training and also for evaluation. So, but now serious games is the use of digital games with purposes that are not only entertainment. They have been successfully applied in many domains. Basically, those domains where there's more money involved, medicine, business, military, and with different purposes. It's not only education. I mean, it's not only knowledge or training. They can also be used for increasing user awareness or even trying to get behavioral change in our users. So serious games are effective, but still there is a low adoption of serious games in the mainstream education. And why it is? Okay, in some cases it's because they are difficult to deploy, but also it's because we need to have more evidence supports based on data about what is the serious game efficacy when deployed. I mean, we need to know more about what is the return of investment when using serious games. Let's check some of the games that you can find it. I mean, as these slides are on Slideshare, you can get all the links. For instance, why the Financial Times create this Uber game? It's just because playing shortly for less than 40 minutes, you can have the real first-hand experience of what is to mean a Uber driver, which is this new economy where very cheap services are provided. So what is the kind of stress and work involved for those drivers? Or for instance, Get Bad News, that was a game about fake news and how to become a troll in the network. It was created by Cambridge University as a research project to get actual data from the users. That is really interesting, and it's simple. I mean, you don't need to do very complex games in order to have something that is effective. What about remission 2 for youngsters to understand what's happening in their body when they are in chemotherapy because they have cancer, or a smoke screen produced by Yale to try to prevent smoking in youngsters, or for instance, Bury Me My Love for understanding what is this difficult process when someone is escaping from their country because there is a war there. So I mean, games can be very effective in understanding complex process and also involve, in many cases, your sentiments. I mean, creates emotion, and their effects are very lastly. I mean, this lasts for a long time in the students. But do serious games actually work? This is not that clear, because in many cases you get the money for producing the games, but you don't get the money for doing the formal evaluation of those games. I mean, testing games with actual users, final user, is complex and expensive. In some cases, the evaluation is more expensive than creating the game. And usually this testing is done with a limited number of users. And of course, I mean, there is always the problem of deploying games in actual environments and knowing what the student has actually learned from playing the game. For instance, we analyze, I mean, bullying and cyberbullying was one of our topics, and we analyze, we do a review of the games. We found 33 games that have supporting scientific papers. Okay, let's go to see how the validation was done. Only 14 out of these 32 games include a user validation. And usually they was done with a very limited number of users. I mean, in most of the cases, less than 100. And very few of them collect the actual user interaction, so to have evidence about what is the actual work done by the students. Of course, there is a huge variety of the games addressing different problems, bullying, cyberbullying, and focusing on different aspects. And also, we saw that in the serious games, there are very few of them who are free to access to see how those were produced. So this is also difficult in the developing of this thing. But okay, how the formal validation of serious game is done? Usually it is done through a pre-post questionnaire. So you put your student through a pre-questionnaire, then they play the game, and you put the student through a post-questionnaire, and you try to measure what is the chain that happened in the students. I mean, there is difference between this pre and post, and in some cases this is done in paper. I mean, this photo on the right-hand side is actual data in one of our experiments, and that's also required that the pre and post questionnaire should be previously validated for your population. So it's a complex process. What happened? I mean, with games in the game industry, there has been game analytics for a long time. It is also called in some cases telemetry, when you get automatically data from your game. So you gain game metrics and plenty of data from your game, but usually it's related with, I mean, it is used for commercial purposes, monetization, trying to understand the user chart, or trying to monetize your users. And learning analytics has been for a long time in the e-learning domain. trying to produce more a data-driven approach, going from this theory-driven to evidence-based system. So getting the data, knowing what is happening, what is working, and trying to improve the systems. Can we put the two together? And this is what game learning analytics is about. So the idea is to collect, analyze, and visualize all the data from the learner's interaction with your serious games, trying to break in this black box that is usually the game for obtaining information about the gameplay. Okay, and of course that implies to get a lot of data from the game. What could be the uses of this game in analytics? Could be plenty of different uses. For instance, for game testing, for improving the actual game before the final version. Okay, so you can get plenty of data, see what is the average playing time, if it is too difficult, too easy. It can help match the game deployment in actual environments and the student evaluation. So you can even get real-time information for supporting the teacher when they deploy the game in the classroom. It is complex and it is difficult to implement, but it's really useful. And of course, we can go one step further and try to go for this stealth using a student evaluation that is proposed by Professor Baltasar in terms of knowing what is a student is learning from the game, but without actually asking directly to the student. And can we go even one step forward and try to provide a formal game evaluation about the game effectivity without needing this pre and post questionnaire? Okay, this is plenty of things. So usually you get an experimental group, you go to these 3 pre-questionnaires, they play the game, and there you begin to collect data. And that if you collect data in real time, it can be used for user control, for session control, for knowing what is happening when you deploy the game and your students are protected by their screens or by their devices. And of course, and off-time analysis, I mean, once that the full procedure has finished and you have the pre and the post questionnaire answer, you can try to relate this with the actual game analytics information that has been automatically obtained while the user was playing. It can be used for all this design, validation, user acceptance, or game efficacy. What are the minimum requirements for doing this process of game learning analytics? Of course, the game cannot be a black box. We need to access to the game guides, and this game need to communicate outside this information. What are the decisions that the student is taking, the player is taking while playing the game? But this is not everything. We need a little bit more. What is the meaning of the data that we are collecting? Because games produce a lot of data. And also, before moving forward, we need to take into account the ethics of the whole process. So we need to have a careful experimental design that has been approved by an ethical panel review. And of course, users should be informed. When possible, the anonymization of the pseudo-anonymization of the data at the origin should be done. And we need to answer the question if it will be a fair data exploitation where all the stakeholders get benefit. In Europe, for instance, you need to be aware of this GDPR law that protect the users' privacy, that this is enforced in all the European countries. And also be aware that game learning analytics is not informatic. I mean, there is a false expectation that you will get a full insight in what is happening in all the educational process when using the game. And in some cases, from data, interaction data that is really very shallow. So the thing is, we need to set more realistic expectation based on which are the requirement, the outcome, and what is the uses of the information, and also the cost and the complexity. For instance, real-time analytics is far more complex and costly than offline analytics. But in general, the idea is that you have a game model or game engine, and you need to collect, aggregate, report, evaluate, and provide some analysis and visualization of these game interactions. Okay, so this is a general model, and the idea is that you should relate your game design with your game implementation and with your game learning analytics. So this could be no missing steps here. So you have a powerful learning design that has beautiful learning goals. Okay, then you need to establish which will be the observables that you will put in your game, so that, and in your game mechanics, so that it can be observed with this information, which are the relevant aspects when the user is playing the game, and try to communicate this outside. Usually this is done through a tracker that is sending the statement or the traces to an external repository that is usually called a learning record store if you are using some standard, for instance, Experience API that we will see a little bit later. And once you have that data, you can have some metrics and do some analysis and present some visualization that are easier to understand. So for instance, let's see what is possible to be done with applying this data science to game learning analytics. We do a full review on that. And which are the purposes? The purposes are usually framework proposal, assessment, analyzing game behavior. But the idea is usually predicting performance and assessing learner, which is the impact of the game. Okay. And we also analyze which are the data science techniques. And usually the more used are pretty classical techniques. And there is more need for explainable artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques. In some cases, some of the system apply techniques where you can extract data, but it's very difficult to explain why this data was obtained and what is the actual meaning of those. Who are the stakeholders who are benefiting from these techniques? In most of the cases are the designers and developers of the game and the researchers, and a little bit less the teachers and education. And it's not so common that the students benefit. I mean, they benefit indirectly because the game is improved, and also the application of the game is improved, but it's not very frequent to give a student access to these results. So in general, game learning analytics can accurately predict game impact. Basically, this performs, it's pretty related with player characteristics. But even, I mean, this game learning analytics can validate serious game design. It's not usually done that way. And of course, this assessment can and should be integrated in the serious game design, but there are some challenges and costs there. Okay, and okay, we see that main focus of the analyzed games was for teaching, and most for math or science related topics. And again, we saw that the simple sizes for testing were pretty small, usually less than 100 users. And usually it was not very systematic. There was no formal reported for getting the data, so it's very difficult to make transparent all those processes. So what we think are the requirements to systematize this game learning analytics in serious games? So all the process is complex and error-prone and even fragile. So there are plenty of things that could happen. I mean, you deploy the game in a school and the Wi-Fi is not good enough. There are delays in sending out the information. There's plenty of things that could happen. So you need to be prepared also for creating these very reliable and even low technology solutions that can be deployed in more environments. Okay, there's a problem that this game learning analytics is a complex process that requires experience that is not usually so common in game developing teams, and also in small companies developing games is not usually present. So in order to systematize this game learning analytics, we require better models, but we also need standards and tools that simplify the process. So of course, we need to clarify which are the models, I mean, the theoretical model for doing, but we need to advance in the standard format for collecting the game learning analytic data that will provide more transparency to the process. It will help with this explainable AI or explainable results of our systems. And of course, we need tools that simplify this implementation, both in authoring, tracking, analysis, and also in the orchestration and management of the experiments. And of course, we need to focus on what, why, how, and who. I mean, what is the data that we collect in that environment? Why? What are the objectives there? So it's for improving the serious game life cycle. It's for monitoring. We're trying to advance, which is what the student has learned. Who will be doing that? Would be the kind of analysis? Will be only visualization, and who is benefiting from that? It will be, as we saw in our analysis, was mainly developers and researchers, and a little bit less teachers. And probably we should improve the system that benefits directly to the student. Indirectly, all of them are benefiting the student because they're improving the final games. So, and of course, we need standards for doing that. So what we have been working for simplifying this process and for reducing our costs, because we create usually at least a couple of games per year, and we deploy it in schools. We run large experiments with some 100 till some 1,000 students. And we decided we need a standard. And we focus on Experience API that has been promoted by the Department of Defense of the United States. And now it's becoming an IEEE open standard. So this is really, really interesting because working with a standard is easier to understand the information that you're communicating out from your games. And there we create a special profile for serious games in cooperation with ADL. And that serious game profile will define the vocabulary needed for understanding what is happening inside the games. So the idea is this Experience API serious game profiles is helping us to model the general action that you can have in a game in terms of completable, accessible, alternative or game object, saying, okay, I have completed this, the action in this environment, and I can move to the next one. I can access to this part, or I took a selection between different alternatives, or I interact with some game objects that they have there. So you can use it for your specific game, but still using a quite generic vocabulary. I mean, this Experience API is something simple to understand. Usually it's who did what on what context at what time. So they are simple statements that are they are not they are simple to use. All of them can have a timestamp, and so it simplifies much to analyze what is happening inside the game, what are actually the user is doing inside the game. That way, if we create a game, either using a specific environment, such as our user UAdventure environment, or just a Unity engine, you design and develop the game, and later on, you can include a tracker that send out information out. Okay, we go a step further and we have created Simba that actually manages not only the sending out of information, but also controls the pre-questionnaire and the post-questionnaire for doing the full evaluation. So we have addressed the full life cycle for our games. But some of this is also available even if you are not using our technology. Okay, I need to declare that all the software development that we do is open code and is available on GitHub. You will see the link in my last slide. So the idea is that we also have an Experience API game tracker as open code. Now it's implementing our serious games application profile, and this information can be sent to our own learning record store. But also, if you want to deploy it in a very low technology environment, you can save that data locally and collect that data later on with a pen drive and analyze the data. So we are also preparing that kind of technology for very, very low technology environments. Okay, and now we plan to extend this game tracker that it can be for, I mean, the specific one for Unity Experience API tracker to be compliant with the new IEEE standard, and also so that it can be easily configured to send the data not to our own learning record infrastructure, but to any standard learning record infrastructure provided by a third party. Okay, let's take a look a little bit about this Simba, this simple game, simple validator that we have created. The idea was integrating LAMP survey for managing the pre and post questionnaires, and of course allowing to have the control of users and the surveys, and even providing anonymous identifier for users. When we went to a school, we don't want to have the actual name of the student, because we usually go to schools and they are minors, and we have this general data protection regulation that is enforced in Europe, and it's complex to deal with personal data. So we work with pseudo-anonymized information. And during the experiment, we get all this information, pre-questionnaire, game analytics, and post-questionnaire, that are identified by the same anonymized code for the same student. So we don't know who the student is, but we know that they have produced this pre-questionnaire, that specific game analytics, and this post-questionnaire. And so we are able to relate all this information for providing a more sophisticated analysis. For instance, in some cases, these pre-post answers were considered to be true. But what happened when the student has answered the post questionnaire, but their actual playing time in the game was only 1 minute? Should be considered that as a valid information? In our case, we think not. This should be considered an outlier, and this information should be removed, because if not, it will be including a lot of noise in our experiments. And of course, after the experiment, Simba allowed us to download and analyze all the data. But this, so Simba just orchestrates all the processes involving from defining the questionnaires to obtaining the final data. And of course, doing that in a correct way. Again, the idea is that we can, we create all this infrastructure that can be used in a very different way. I say, of course, in this case, we need to have a full internet data connection time, because LAMP survey runs on the web. So the students, before entering into the game, go to the LAMP surveys and provide the answer. And you can see the idea of the identifiers that we use, that usually are 4 or 5 letters to the student, and they are provided physically to the student before running the experiment. So we get all the data, and we can compare and analyze all this information. But then you have all the data, but okay, you need to do some analysis. We have created Timon, this monitoring experience APIs serious game traces in Python. The idea is, okay, you can have someone who is a data scientist in your group, but doesn't know much about experience API or about serious games. Okay, the idea was, can we reduce the entering costs into this kind of analysis? So we created this this processor. So from Experience API, you can go to a Jupyter notebooks and do usual and common analysis and visualization. And some of them came for free, because if you're using our game profile of Experience API, so for instance, what is the average serious game time completion? This is provided automatically. What is the progress? Which are the choices in alternative that has been more selected by the user? How many completables? That is also related with what is the advance in the game of your student. All those analyses came by default, and so you only need to run these Python scripts. Of course, there are some other more complex, for instance, which are the heatmaps, which are the object or elements where the user has interacted more times in your game. Okay. And of course, maximum and minimum times of doing things. So with this part, we have a game learning and analytics methodology. So we can apply this for the game validation phase. I mean, collecting all the data and trying to analyze if the results were the one expected. We can try to use this game analytic data for predicting what is the knowledge gain or what is a user behavioral change when finishing the running of the game. And of course, we can use for improving the game deployment phase and trying to see what is happening there. Let's go to one of the experiments that we run. So this is a first aid game. I mean, it's quite old. It was developed in 2012 and was validated in the schools. And the idea is, as this game was previously validated, can we go through this process and we run a different experiment with more than 200 students and applying the full methodology with the pre-test, with 15 questions that were extracted for the validated questionnaire. We get all the gameplay interaction and the post-test. And then, of course, all this was done usually using our Experience API serious game profile. And we say, okay, can we use the games for evaluation? Can we, I mean, as we have, I mean, it was previously validated game, and we saw which was the result in the post test. Can we predict those results, even avoiding the pre-test and knowing what's the actual learning of the student happen when using the games? Yes, we were able to do that with a high precision. Can we avoid the post-test? And so using the game for measuring the actual learning. So the idea is, I mean, we have these two situations where we can use the games for evaluating knowledge or even using the games for teaching and measuring what was the actual gain in the process. Another game was cyberbullying conectado game. So you are a student that came new to a new high school and you need to survive for 5 days with very nasty friends. And this is a cyberbullying. I mean, the aggression happened in the school and also at home through the social networks. And I mean, it's a point and click game, and we were able to validate. We ran a huge experiment with more than 1,300 students in 12 different schools all around Spain. And all that data was manageable because we have this infrastructure. Of course, we were able to validate the game and to evaluate this significant increase in the cyberbullying awareness. And of course, we were able to do very sophisticated analysis. You have there the reference to access the actual paper if you are interested in seeing all the things that can be extracted from this kind of approaches. So the idea is that, of course, game learning analytics is not so easy, but can be simplified using different tools. I didn't focus on Adventure authoring tool, but it's our tool that is built on top of Unity. So when you create a serious game, point and click adventure game, you don't need to program. And when you create the game, this game comes out of the box automatically without you needing to do anything, with some basic analytics that can be, communicated outside of the game. I say to our cloud infrastructure that can be deployed in your servers, or even for storing locally all the learning analytic data. So the game analytic data, sorry. We have this Simba, this simple management tool for managing the experiment. That is also integrated with Adventure, but can be used without Adventure, and that relates all the information obtained from the pre and post questionnaires with the actual analytic data through anonymized identifiers. And of course, we have the Experience API tracker for different technologies that we plan to update and extend for the new IEEE Experience API standard when this is final. And we also have this Timon analysis tool for, analyze all the data in a Python environment. That way, we have an iterable ecosystem for complete game learning analytic lifecycle. You can access to the code and to our experiments. So that could be used for improving the game, for reviewing the result, or even for user assessment. In conclusion, because I'm almost running late of my 35 minutes, so game learning analytics has a great potential for improving serious games by creating more evidence-based serious games. Of course, for improving stealth student evaluation, knowing what the user has learned from our games, and for using the game as a powerful research environment, because you are getting plenty of data, and of course you can analyze that and publish in better journals because you will have plenty of data. It's still complex to implement this game learning analytics because it's fragile, it's difficult, you need to have all the experience, but we try to reduce this cost. We propose the use of these new standards, such as Experience API, and using open software tools. In most of the cases, even you can even find the code of our games, so that you can see how our games were produced either in Adventure or in Unity. And that also can help to systematize and to learn the process. And of course, when you are collecting user data, ethics should drive all the game learning analytic process. And that was all. I ran 1 minute late. And thank you very much. All our publications are in this link, and all our open code are in GitHub, so you can see there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is a wonderful talk. So I think all the XAPI can help us to collect the user's information very easily and help us to understand students' learning performance. So I would like to ask any participants you would like to ask question. If you would like to ask question, you can post it on the Q&A or chat. So anyone has any questions? So if we want to use your tool, we just need to go to the GitHub and download the codes.
Yes, we have all our papers open in our website, and also we have our code. I mean, the idea is in some cases our code is far from perfect, but we still decide to share it because we want the community that could profit from that and can help us to improve it. So for instance, this is also, I mean, it's giving us more impact, and also it's helping us because we are getting plenty of feedback from other groups. So for instance, now we are approaching different problems. We have Articode that is a game for introducing Scratch programming to a student in the schools. And that was produced by a group of my students, because I also teach serious games in the game development engineering title degree at Complutense University, and that has been improved and has already been tested at the school. So the idea is that when that you have the infrastructure, any kind of game that you produce, either large or small, can be actually tested with a student and get plenty of data that can be used for improve. And we also have a very small game for helping in the more egalitarian approach in education and STEM. So the idea is for really understanding what are the problems that STEM women has when confronting a interview for working as a coder in a company. And the idea is that you need to play the game. I mean, this is for youngster people, and the idea is that they will play the game as a woman, but they don't know it in advance. So they will be posed to very difficult questions that usually they will never experience in their life because they are men. So the two experiments that we are running now at different stages. But the idea is that when we have this game learning analytic infrastructure that takes time and take effort, then it's very simple to apply this to the new games. So you improve the life cycle of the games very easily, because you test the game with some of probably initial 30 students, and from that you learn you get a lot of data. You see the things that work, the things that doesn't work, and based on evidence, not only based on which is your impression of how the student play. So that is helping us much.
Yeah, I think it's not only helping the non-programmers, because when some of my students, they are computer science students, when they want to build a game, honestly speaking, it also takes them a lot of time. So, we cannot touch the data collection to analyze students' behavior yet. So I think, your work is really, really good for, no matter for the CS or non-CS class. I think that would be great. Yeah, maybe I should have some cooperation with you. So
yeah, we're open to that. Actually, I use also that in my serious game module. The idea is that as we have reduced the cost of doing these kind of things, if they are using UAdventure, and also UAdventure has now extension for geolocalized games. So for instance, we have created a game for understanding the Spanish Civil War that happened in our campus in Madrid. It was a great place. It was a very relevant place for the Madrid battle between the two sides in Spain. And so they can actually check some of the landmarks using a mobile, and it's really nice. That's COVID situation slow us much on that evaluation process, because this is a real nice game. And we are also developing some prototypes with my student just inside the module. They are undergraduate students. They are doing some combination of narratives from some novels that happen in the old Madrid. And they are just defining short stories where you go through some really historical landmarks in Madrid. And it's really nice, the situation, because they fully understand the narratives, and it's not so complex going from the design to the implementation. And then they can improve much, because at the beginning, yes, the designing is complex. They work in teams of 3 people, 3 developers. And that can speed up the process of quality producing some results. So it's helping us a lot.
Yeah, because game is not only the coding, it's also a lot of design narrative. Yeah.
Exactly. And also to actually see through data if their design works or not. Because in some cases, they are very optimistic. Okay, this is a perfect design. That will work greatly. Come on. In some cases, it's not the situation.
Yeah,
so,
that's cool.
And of course, I learned a lot as a professor there, because I mean, every year I have for probably 5 to 8 different projects. Some of them are not that good, but a couple of them are usually very, very good, because we have very good students. I mean, they are really selected. I mean, they need to have a high mark to enter into our game development program. And they are highly motivated. It's an elective module. So, I mean, the result is really nice. I'm happy with the situation. I enjoy it very much, actually.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So any question from our attendees? No? Okay. So, but thank you very much for the talk. I will definitely to take a look at what we can have some cooperation in the future, because I think that is a very good tool. Yeah. So I think that's it. So for the technical team, anything you want to announce, or we will end up the session?
I was just remind everyone that my slides are already on Slideshare. I posted here. I don't know if they see the chat here, but if not,
no,
just looking.
You are direct messaging me, so maybe you should post it again to everyone.
Yeah, okay. Any case, they are already there, so they can be.
So let me post it here. So this.
Perfect.
Yeah. So so if anyone needs to download the slide, I will download the slide anyway. So I'll just copy the link. And so any other questions? No? So thank you very much, Dr. Baltasar, and I hope that we can meet in person later or at some point of time. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, you, Rita, and again, all the organizers for inviting me to be here. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Bye.
Oh, sorry. I totally forget. Sorry, the certificate. Okay,
thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have this certificate also by mail?
Yes. No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much for being our Steam-based speakers. So this certificate, and maybe some of you wants to take a snapshot.
We will send you email. Don't worry.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for your wonderful talk. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of today's activities in the conference hall. I would like to say thank you to all participants and our speaker for all of you to joining us, and see you tomorrow at the closing ceremony. Thank you. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ